Yeah. Hello, guys.
Hey,
Um,
how
just give me, just give me a moment. How are you doing?
good? Thanks, and you guys.
Good, good. Yeah. Are you guys good? Are you connected? Can you please say something? Stan? Hello, guys. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, cool, cool, cool.
Okay. Just give me 1 second. I'm just getting my charger quickly. I'll be right back.
Sure, sure, sure. No, no problems. Just want to check who else is joining us here, because there are a lot of people will be streaming this via LinkedIn or YouTube. So I just want to double check that is happening.
Guys, I don't know if if you guys can hear me, but I can't hear a thing. There might be something with the audio.
Stan, I can hear you. Uh, Kenilwe, are you good on your side? Um, okay, so now check.
Guys, I can't hear anyone really.
Can you say something, Nis?
Yeah, so I can hear I can hear you and Stan. Can you
Okay.
guys hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can. I can hear you clearly. Kenilwe, are you good?
It's probably all this load shedding creating a lot of
Okay.
chaos.
Okay. Let's see, because I'm expecting um someone else to join. I'm not sure if Boom is coming. Okay. We'll just give them a minute or two. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll have to start. Stan, are you good? Okay. I'm just trying to double check if there's anyone.
Yeah, I don't think it's a permission thing because otherwise I also wouldn't have been able to like unmute or talk.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, anyways, I think we should start. And yeah, I mean, before we start, I want you guys to introduce yourselves. Yeah, before I ask you to do that, I basically want to say, welcome and yeah, thanks for joining. And today's live knowledge sharing session, it's about becoming a great designer a day at a time. Yeah, so I'm quite keen, to hear from you guys and also from the audience and anyone that will be joining us, just to like share, from their perspective, how they got to be where they are today. And I would also like, like share some slides on my side But yeah, this is meant to be like, collaborative and engaging session. The main aim of this session is to really, to connect, inspire, and build an African design community, and also, to be able to draw inspiration, amongst each other designers, and to collaborate, beyond the brands that we're working for. So yeah, I'm gonna start you with this. If you could just like, please just tell us, like, who you are, your name, the company that you work for, and what do you guys do? Just so at least we've got a bit of context about your company and yourself, and your role.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you so much for like the invite and giving me the
Sure.
opportunity to join you guys. So I'm Nis. It's short for Aniska. I've been in the design industry for almost a decade now. So originally started my career as more tech, so front-end design, but eventually morphed more into the UX UI side of things. So currently I'm a product design lead at Order In. So we service obviously your SMME, so it's a lot of to do with your last mile deliveries, your SaaS industry and your DaaS industry. Got an extensive like amounts of different industries that I've worked with within the fintech space. I've also worked for BMW with all of their portfolios and all of that stuff. So if anybody ever wants to reach out just to get a little bit more information, please just feel free to chat to me. I'm always open and willing to help. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks. I actually checked in your Order In. I remember, seeing some like labels. I'm not sure. I think I was in Cape Town, and yeah, like it's always like nice, to see like some amazing like startups, in our space. So yeah, let me also in well, I've added Mbumi. So Mbumi, please, we're just doing some quick intros. So Dr. Stanley is struggling with his audio setup. So when he rejoins, he will quickly introduce himself. So yeah, please, Mbumi, just introduce yourself before we start.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Bumi, for sure. I head up UX at Old Mutual. My background primarily is UX, although obviously the design team that 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 we have now focus on UX. My personal experience is largely in UX and largely in corporate as well. So my interests are really UX and scale. So building teams, design ops. That's kind of where my headspace is at in design and building design leadership. Yeah, cultivating and building design leadership in essence. Yeah, and at large, kind of my UX vision. If I put it as a if I had to put a headliner on it, is to see. I want to see more designers in senior business leadership positions, right? So yeah, so more designers as business leaders, as opposed to business leaders being business leaders and designers only just informing. So yeah, so that's really it, and hence the stress on design leadership, and building capability and collaboration in teams, etc. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Thanks, Putu.
Okay, sure, Mbumi. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Am I
Yeah,
clear? Sorry,
yes,
was I clear?
yes, you are. Yes,
Okay.
you are. So what I'll do is, yeah, so there were some few guests that were supposed to join us, and the rest of the guys will be, joining the conversation, following it via LinkedIn and also YouTube. Yeah, so I basically wanted to, let me just share my screen, and let me also like, yeah, quit Teams, just so that, I get a lot of noise in the background. Yeah, so I mean, I want to add, today's conversation, to be, open, and I want us to engage, and to share like our opinions. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So today's topic, right, is about becoming a great designer a day at a time, and yeah. So I've got like some few slides that I want to share, but I'm quite keen, for you guys to share from your own experiences, what it took for you to be here, and yeah. So the first question is to really, share from your own experience. How have you become a better designer in your career?
Cool. I can go.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, so I think for me, one of the things that helped me a lot was really copying,
Yeah.
and trying to learn why things work and why things don't. So way back in the day, I think now we have a lot of libraries like open design systems um, and very elaborate kind of technology standards like Material and iOS, etc. But back in the day, there was a lot of there was a few pattern libraries
Yeah.
starting to come out to emerge on the web, and just trying to understand. So going from like guesswork in terms of your design and trying to understand, what sits behind those patterns and how they got established to be a pattern. And that was really important for me because it taught me about best practice. It taught me about and standards and design standards that we all read about those theoretically a lot, and you get a little example here and there. You may read about affordance, you may read about gestalt, you may read about these things, but then when you get into kind of patterns and reading and understanding how those why those become sustained, you start to connect the two. And I thought that really as a foundation. Um, yeah, and the next thing was really exposing myself to a lot of user testing as
Yeah.
much as
Yeah. Yeah.
possible, like leaning into that. Was really, it cannot be overstated. It cannot be
Yeah.
overstated how important it is, for even if you don't consider yourself a researcher or anything of that nature, but if you're a designer, you're always designing for people, and the more you expose yourself to that,
Yeah. Yeah.
the better designer I believe you'll be. So I think, yeah, those were really the two things for me that come to mind.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I see. We've joined by Maduna. Yeah. So could you please just introduce yourself? Your name, who you are, which company do you work for, and what do you do?
Good afternoon, team. So from my side, Bongani Maduna with Nedbank, and yeah, so I've kind of dabbled around. I come from the quantitative space mainly, but we obviously
Mm-hmm.
use cross methodologies depending on the ask. Previously in the Department of Defense space, R&D, and I think doing that transition, coming to a space where you had to connect with humans has been quite an eye opener, because previously it was more design a product that's efficient, effective, and ensures that
Yeah.
people's lives are protected. And it was that simple. Wootsie, you're happy, there's a hedonic experience that's very minimal. Right? I mean, if you're sitting in a grippin or a tank and you're trying to do what your mission requirements are, the last thing you're worried about is that the fabric doesn't make you feel happy. Whereas in this space, I am more involved with, aesthetics are quite a huge thing. So it's been a learning curve, and I think one thing I appreciate, I think Bumelo, you mentioned it. User research has been something that I look at it differently now, because it never ends. Now we're
Yeah.
dealing with the I don't want to say onslaught, but like the rise of Gen Z and Gen Alpha as prominent customers that we need to deal with. And whatever we've learned from the baby boomers and our working knowledge needs to be updated accordingly to fit, or to allow our solutions to fit what they require. And we know that TikTok has influenced quite a lot of people. There was a time and space when you were dealing with Twitter. So yeah, man, that's me. I'm currently senior UX researcher at Nedbank and product designer.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks a lot. Yeah, so Nis, from Order In, I'm gonna come back to you. I'm quite curious to hear from you as well. How did you become a great designer, or what it means for you to become a better, greater designer, etc.?
Yeah. So yeah, it's actually quite such an interesting topic. If I think back when I just started off, in an agency, my very first job, like we didn't have the nice like Figma and Adobe XD kind of stuff. So we had to hash it out on like, you get a template, you do your dev tools, you change stuff and you do your HTML and you style it accordingly, or you would draw it out. But as the years obviously progressed, like all these new and like amazing tools started coming out. So like that's really been very helpful. So the sooner people can start, like, obviously just getting to know the software and really understanding it as well. And also what I've also noticed is like, not only for a designer to just be siloed, but to work very closely with the dev team. Because a lot of times I've seen like designers would create these beautiful stuff. I mean, if you go and look at Dribbble or Behance or any Pinterest even, you see all these beautiful designs, but it's just not practical in a dev environment. So that's something that I learned, very fortunate that I learned very early in my career. But for me, I think just having mentorships, like that's really important. People that you look up to. It doesn't have to necessarily be like a co-worker or anything, but just someone that you find like, oh, you can relate to their designs. And then also, like everybody else on this call has said, like, we can't stretch enough like how important it is for UX research. Because obviously we've got an idea of like what the design should look like, because we get it obviously from the product team. But like once you actually sit with your customers and you see how they actually start implementing or using it on a day-to-day basis, you learn so much from them. Like it's almost a no-brainer. Like you have to. And then so that's what I do. Study a lot. I love studying, upskilling, doing a lot of tutorials, reading a lot of stuff on Medium. I'm a big fan of Nielsen Norman's group. Like they've got really cool short little snippets. So, whatever you need to know quickly, you can go and look at there. But it's also just trying to keep up to date, and especially with the cross-platform devices, with the MUI, with like Apple guidelines, Android, like you've got your web platforms and all of that stuff. So it's really just owning into that and practicing. I've also, what I try to do to just like, push myself forward and like, learning a lot more is to do these like, I think Dribbble actually has it, and I can't remember the other ones, but I can share it with you and then you can share it with the audience. It's like daily UX UI challenges. So they will give you like a little thing to do and you just go and build it, and you with them in a community that will give you like instant feedback. So it's really just bouncing off your ideas with other people as well, making sure that like, what you put out there is actually what the market is looking for.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I'm quite excited, to hear, the stories from you guys. And I mean, like, definitely, we've come a long way in terms of the tools that are available today. I mean, even social media has grown so much, I mean, the space has like matured, and, it's getting harder and harder to be better every day, right? So what I want to do is I'm gonna share like some few slides, and then I'll pause a bit, in between, just to get your input and hear your guys' thoughts. Okay, cool. I'm seeing Dr. Stanley Molefi joining us. I know he's been struggling with his mic. Yeah, if you can hear us, you can just stay on the call, Alternatively, you can drop us a message even on LinkedIn. I will read I'll read out your responses. Okay. Yeah, so I posed this question to you guys. Can you guys see my screen? Sure. So this is my bit of perspective, right? How I've become better as a designer, right? To be great, you must not think that you're great, because a lot of things change. Customers, they would expect something, like new every now and then. They will expect something different. They'll be influenced by, new companies that are coming to the space, like, the likes of Uber, Airbnb, etc., right? Technology changes, and now there's a lot of like talk about Web3, right? And I would try like love us as designers to be like in the forefront of those discussions, and not just to be led by technology, right? The business strategy is changing every day, and so yeah, at some point you would realize that you can't really call yourself a great designer, but you need to humble yourself and keep learning, right? And yeah, so the other thing that has like helped me as well is to be a great thief, and not being ashamed to keep stealing, and knowing that someone has done something better, copy it and make it better. And so yeah, the other tip that I'd love to share to anyone that is watching, right? I've learned a lot by just paying attention to every digital interaction of every brand that I interact with. When I fire Spotify, I pay attention to everything that happens. How my like playlist gets like recommended. Even when I click like the like song, what actually happens. Those like micro interactions, right? And just being like more intentional about my everyday interaction with technology has helped me to grow so much. And that helps me because I can easily draw from those interactions, and I can remember if I'm solving a problem, I'll ask myself, who do I think has solved this problem better, and so that I can know where to go if I want to steal, right? And so how do I steal? Being familiar with one of like call it top 10 or whatever, right? Popular apps or sites, and depending on the context, if I need to look at globally, or in context of the country, and also to understand that to understand what customers admire. And you will often like hear about um brands that customers like love, right? And we would often like hear the reasons why they love them, etc., right? And it's great to be able to pay attention to that, and also to understand what they hate. I know a lot of brands, they will post something on Facebook, and doesn't matter if the ad is if the post is about a new product, if if they're angry, they will just come in and just share their comments or frustrations with the brand. And yeah, and also, although I admire like these like big brands that are coming, even like the startups that are like emerging, in the African context, right? Being intentional about critiquing those brands, it has helped me like to become better, because I know anything that we solve for, someone else can improve it, right? And also being able to identify like the upcoming startups that are in the space, right, that are like disrupting the industry, because they always come with a fresh perspective. And yeah, because you get the likes of Uber, then there'll be like Bolt, and you get the like of Airbnb. I'm sure there's like other versions out there, right? And even we've seen in the South African context, right? The number of like delivery apps, and they're getting better and better, right? Whether it's from a pricing point perspective, or from like the way they improve the user experience. They start off by like delivering food from one store. Next thing they say, hey, you can buy from multiple stores and have one delivery, etc., in one go, right? So I just want to pause here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe you guys want to add something to what I've shared, and yeah, we can elaborate.
I think
Nis,
from my side. Oh,
okay, no, it's fine.
Sorry, I was actually looking for the features. I'm busy trying to learn this tool. I'm like, this is the first time on this platform. Yeah.
Sure.
I think coming from where I come from and just listening to you and how you express yourself, I love the fact that you comfortably utilized the term steal. And a friend of mine, and I trust that we're mature enough to understand the context of SA and so I'm
Sure,
like, hey,
sure.
very confident. But I think the critical element there and what's being highlighted is the fact that there's so much, and I mean, if you start looking at design now and how we're looking at like some of the SDGs and the ESG goals, like we're trying to go back to the environment. It's not, I would, and not to say what the word you used was wrong, but I think we repurpose a lot. You know, there's a saying in science that says you can't create or destroy energy, you just transform it from one, like, form to another, kinetic to electric, etc., etc. And in your effectively, and that's something that we all do. We have to learn from others, or else we run the risk of, repeating mistakes of the previous. I'll call all of us designers, because I think there's an element of design in quite a lot of what we do as humans. You know, currently I'm designing my life around my kids' preschooling activities. And where did I steal from? I stole from my experiences. But if I bring it closer to home, and when I started in the more UX space and as a UX researcher, and then transitioned into product design, to your point, so we were designing a journey for customers onboarding onto a financial product, a credit product. And for me, where I stole from, because I love the app, and every time they update things, I just find it's become more intuitive with understanding me, and that's Apple Music, or iTunes rather. And I like that intuitive element where they just ask you about you, but the outcome was this beautifully orchestrated playlist setup where you tap any button and whatever time of day, if you feel that mood, they actually got you right. Spotify, I'd say, did it better, but Apple has kind of caught up. Similarly with, how Netflix asks you a couple of questions, and they kind of have you figured it out. Now, being in the financial sector, something I personally think is really important, because onboarding tends to be done by your frontline staff who are to push numbers and not necessarily care about the customer. You know, you'll find someone selling life cover, you'll find a savings account, and long down the line, people don't actually stick, and we have job force. And then you ask yourself the question,
Sure.
what happened? Why didn't people actually adhere to this? And it boils down.
No, thanks.
Pardon?
Yeah. No. I'm saying, like, thanks, Mutuna, for sharing that. And Nis, can you please jump in? And there's also like a question that I want to share with you guys later.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with like your, the bullet points that you do. So I'm also very big at like looking at competitors, benchmarking, because, rather than trying and like create something from scratch, you learn from other people that's done it really well. So the likes of Spotify, likes of F&B, like, all these big players. So that I'm definitely like advocate, like go and look at it, really comb through it, like play around it, actually try and break it to try and understand, how they got to where they did. So for that point of view, like, I'm definitely like on board. I do the same. And then another thing that I've really noticed, also coming from a fintech like space, working with startups and all of that stuff, people are creatures of habit. So if they are used to using Spotify and seeing like certain UI patterns, it's almost like they expect your app to work not similar, but like, for instance, like the burger menu to be in a similar position as your app, for instance. And the moment that you bring in anything that's a little bit like too crazy, people like do get scared. So really just looking at what's out there, looking at what they've done, how they've achieved it, how they've like obviously got to their success, and then like borrowing from that. Absolutely agree with you.
Sure. No, thanks, Maduna and Nis. Bomi? Bubelelo, I'm not sure. Are you on mute?
I'm still on mute. Sorry, I didn't.
Okay.
I just
Sure.
tapped and looked away. Yeah, I think I agree with what's being said with regards to trying to understand other interactions on other platforms, and how they would how they design interactions or even journeys like onboarding, etc., etc., etc. I do think for me it's also still important, and believe me, I do a lot of that as well, because I feel like if you're in a space where you're designing for I've also been largely in the finance sector. If you're designing a banking app, or if you're designing a credit card journey or screens or whatever the case may be, at any point in time, if anybody asks you what good looks like and bad looks like, you should have these references in mind, right? You should be able to say, oh no, check out this website, or check out this app, or check out this interaction, even if it may not be directly related to what you're doing, but you kind of need to know that. But also the what good looks like is not a gut thing, right? It's really, for me, it goes back to really trying to understand the theory behind the design, as it were. What are the design principles and the standards? So if Spotify is doing something really well in design technical language, let's put it that way, what is that? Right? Because if you can't distill it to that, it becomes difficult for you to translate it to your design, right? And that's really important to me. So you need to be able to know that if you're going to copy something, what actually sits underneath it, what makes it good, what makes it bad, and what makes it either apply or not apply to your current scenario. Because there's a lot of good things, I'm sure, as we worked on projects like, this is nice, but I can't use this. It doesn't apply to my current context, because you can rationalize it to you, and you need to find a way to apply it based on the context and that understanding. So that's really the main thing to me. So looking outwards and benchmarking, but having an understanding of what makes something good and what makes something bad, so that you to kind of learn from it.
Yeah.
How to steal it, I guess.
Okay. Cool. Thanks, guys. Yeah. I mean, I'm just like also listening and reflecting to to what you're saying, and I guess because it took us it took a bit of experience for us to get to where we're at, and also allowing ourselves the opportunity to grow, right? Because we always like challenge ourselves in terms of what we think is the best way to approach design, or what is the best way to grow, etc. Right. So the third tip that I wanted to look at, right, for any designer to become a great thief, is to look at what to steal and what to improve, right? Like, to your point, you can see great stuff, but you won't necessarily know what to steal, right? And so often I would look at like at the entire customer journey, ask myself, right, how relevant is this journey to what I want to build, and also what are the key things that I could steal from it, and also looking at a specific feature, right, and also drilling down into like UI component level. Sometimes you might find that there's a company that has done a great job in terms of solving the problem, but they haven't solved it like the best way, right? Maybe you might even steal like a specific feature or a specific UI component, but fundamentally the journey that you look at, maybe another company has done it a great. I mean the best, right? And maybe they had like a best like UX designer to look at the problem, to solve it, etc. Maybe they didn't have like the best like developers, or maybe the best UX engineers, etc., right, to articulate it and to take the experience to the next level. And also sometimes you might find that the journey itself is awesome, but when you actually interact, with the brand, you might find that there's a better way of telling the story, right? Maybe if you look at like conversational design principles in terms of how people can, how designers can craft the content. Maybe there's a company, that has done it, better, right? And you also like look at the look and feel. So sometimes you could still you could steal from many different brands, right? And with the aim of improving a specific, a solution. And also, just because something looks bad, there's always like something good that you can learn from, right? And being able like to stay open and ask yourself, right, what is relevant? Because to be a great thief, you can't just like steal everything. You need to be, you need to challenge yourself and ask yourself, right, is this worth stealing? Is this still relevant? Is this kind of thinking, still applicable in 2020, right? So the other thing that I wanted to, share is something about being a great spy, and not being ashamed of spying. And so what I mean by that is, like, I'll often go, I use social media, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, every now and then. And yeah, I often like observe people, what they say, what they post, what they discuss. Maybe sometimes they will even like share different banks and say, hey, which one, is the best bank? Which bank have you had the best experience with? Maybe it could be in terms of, getting, your account, or maybe the loan they provide, or maybe, the banking facilities, etc., right? Or maybe even from a cost perspective, right? And sometimes you'll even see like these like trending topics, and you get to understand what matters to people, like diversity and inclusion, GBV, etc. And also you can get to see and observe how people are challenging the brands, to be inclusive, right? I mean, we've seen a number of brands where they got into trouble because of the pictures that they've used, right? Pictures that are like reflecting of, of our like diverse and inclusive, customers in South Africa, right? And when you pay attention, you get to learn a lot, right? You get to like reflect and understand. you know it's like it's an opportunity to do research, but indirectly, right? And even like the people, that we interact with, our like, partners or family members or friends, right? You get to like observe, their behavior, what they say, what they struggle with, their preferences, and so forth. Okay. um Love to Let me just pause here a bit and hear your comments about being a spy as a designer. Maduna.
No, I love the human touch you've put to the labels, and I think you hitting on something that Nisi touched on, and that is constant upskilling. You cannot forego continuous learning. At
Yeah.
no can you let your bias let you believe you know everything there is to know, and you touch on it. I think in passing, you'll get some of these companies that go, "Hey, Spoo, you lived in XYZ, so what do the people there, you know?" And that's their marketing research, and then they translate that to their CX and so forth. So it is ever so critical as an individual and also as a team to continuously upskill yourself. So I am not ashamed to now stand up and say to certain people, "I don't know," because what I'm saying is, please fill my cup. As much as, yes, I have aspects that I understand, but I also would like to know. And yeah, I follow certain accounts. I try ensure that my algorithm on TikTok link everywhere answers questions I have. Yeah, so that's my spy technique, my little CIA efforts.
Okay, sure. Nis, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think I definitely echo everything that Maduna has just said. It is important for you to constantly be aware of what's out there, especially again, what's your competitors, but also, making sure that you're not just looking at competitors for the sake of looking at them, but they must actually make a difference, or there should be a need for it within the app that you're building or the software that you're building. Because point in looking at Shopify if you're building a delivery system, for instance. You might learn something from it, but like it's just not going to be. It's going to be a bit of a waste of time. But continuous research, continuous interviews with users. So I love using my mom as an example. So she's still getting onto she's not completely tech savvy, but like obviously, there is a big growing market within South Africa. If you look at the smartphones, it's a lot more accessible to a lot more people. So a lot of more people are like obviously even with the thing, a lot more people are connected to the internet and all of that. So it's still fairly new to them. Whereas for us, it might be like, we've been in it for years. So it feels natural to us. But really just so making sure that you understand their needs and their understanding and helping them through that process. So yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. So we've got a question here from Tsepo, posted via LinkedIn, saying that for a young designer who want to become a better UX UI, what challenges and tasks would you recommend? So I'm not sure if Bumi, you can just respond to that.
I think other than the things that I've covered about the first two things, I think we have to focus on, I always compare like design and stuff to if you're trying to be good at boxing, or if you're trying to become a ninja, right? Or if you're trying to become a black belt, you gotta focus on your craft. You gotta focus on getting better at intuitively knowing the things, right? So certain moves when you start learning anything, or even if you start learning how to drive, will be a little bit difficult to do, but by the time you've done it over a period of time and you do it continuously, they become easier and easier and become subconscious. So I think for me, the main thing would be to practice your craft, and that can be anything, right? That can be, as much as possible. Obviously, research is a lot. So how do you find ways to constantly expose yourself to research and users, right? Is it conducting your own, or is it doing guerrilla testing every now and then? Is it watching other people's videos? Even if you're not directly involved in the projects, that's that sort of stuff. And also, I think we also sometimes undermine your tools. Practice. Learn your tools as well and know how to use them. So that when it's time to actually design and do stuff and visualize your intent, you kind of adapt at doing that. So I think those would be the two things that really come to mind.
Yeah. Okay, cool. No, thanks, Bumi. And then another question from Tabang. My question goes to any in the panel. What future do you see for this field, UX, UI? And also if you're from a UX research background, I think that will also be relevant because we've got a diverse, diverse designers that are streaming.
Yeah, I think, if I could just shine light on that,
Sure.
if I think back when I just started off my career, and this was in 2013, the UX term wasn't exactly something that South Africa has adopted yet. It was kind of like not existent here. So you were just seen as a designer. But over the years, it's now morphed into so many different UX, UI like titles that like sometimes I'm not even sure what it means. You've got your UX engineer and like all of those kind of things. But like there's definitely a really big need for it. And I think what makes it also really important is that person aspect. So if you're a graphic designer, you obviously get, your design brief, but you never really get to speak to the actual customer and understand their needs. Whereas with the UX UI, you bridge that gap. And it's the same within like, the dev space. Like you can bridge that gap very easily with your developers or your engineers on hand. And if you're fortunate to have like maybe a product owner, so you can go back to them and be like, hey, okay, let's work together with the customer to make sure that whatever we give them at the end of the day is exactly what they want. So yeah, I think it's still very much in its infancy and it's very much booming. So there's definitely a future that I see for it.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Nes. So I'm seeing a comment from Kenlwe. One of the things that I do in terms of spying is that I apply to building my personal branding currently, looking at how some designers are putting themselves out there in order to build their presence online. So I'd love to come back on that one. Thanks, Kenlwe, for your comment. So let me just soldier on a bit, and then I'm gonna come and ask you guys to share your opinion. So collaboration, right? Collaborating beyond the company that you work for, that is something that is becoming, a trend. And it just like developers, they've been excellent at this. That's why you're seeing blockchain progressing. That's why you're seeing concepts like big data, open banking, open finance, right? But we're not actually, as designers, we should be leading this conversation from an experience perspective, so that we don't just rely on technology that is available, but we can conceptualize what an ideal experience looks like, coupled by our understanding of our of the current technology. So collaborating beyond the company that we work for, right? How does that help someone to get better, right? And having a side project actually helps someone, to really grow, because sometimes well, even if like you feel that the work that you're doing is not challenging enough, you can always find something outside of your working environment to challenge yourself, to help you grow, to get better at becoming a designer, and like learning beyond the industry that you are in, and also being part of the design communities, doing some like design challenges and hackathons. And I mean, I've been seeing quite a few in South Africa, that are coming up, number of hackathons, that companies have, and some they even, open those hackathon and design challenges, to designers outside of the company, so that they can allow, designers who are not just employees, but who are not just their employees, but to invite like a broader community to solve a problem. And I mean, we've seen a number of events that people have been attending, and a lot more they're coming up, especially during COVID. And there's something that I wanted to touch on, right? Caring about the entire journey. Like a lot of times, designers, they care about jumping into Figma, doing awesome designs. And nowadays you'll see a trend where designers are posting stuff on LinkedIn or Twitter, wherever, saying, hey, look at my awesome design, any feedback. And most of the times you'll see people getting likes and not necessarily getting like critical feedback that will grow people, right? Because a lot of the designers are no longer focusing on problem solving, but more like on designing and coming up with awesome stuff. And sometimes that awesome stuff looks brilliant, but unfortunately, in terms of like solving problem, you'd find that people they're not like critical in terms of how they apply themselves, right? And they don't spend a lot of time understanding the problem into detail, and they don't even ask themselves, right? How is this like solution marketed, right? Who's coming to our platform? How are they coming to my platform, right? And what the people that are coming from different touch points, right? In which what mindset are they coming with? And also like once we design stuff, stuff goes live and we hope for the best, right? How do we actually stay intentional about following through our designs and make sure that whatever is live, right, is actually working, so that we're not reactive and we hear someone say, hey, that stuff is not working, you're not getting the numbers that we want to, right? But being proactive to say, hey, let's look at how our solution is working. What are the tweaks that we can do? What are the small changes that we can do? And so forth. So the other thing is I wanted to share is spending less time designing and more time understanding the customers, which is something that I just briefly touched on, right? I often look at executive summary reports. This is now sometimes you might have the luxury of doing UX research, and have the time, to recruit participants, to think about, the type of research that you want to do, and and have the time to deep dive and reflect on the questions that you will ask, with an effort to assess the level of feedback that you get and so forth, right? And that takes a bit of time, right? And because we have different sizes of organizations. Those who have number of UX researchers, that those who maybe have one UX researcher, or maybe some they don't have any researcher at all, right? As a product designer or or UX designer, right? You have to kind of play that role, right? So if you don't have enough, time, right, or you don't have the resources in your company, what is it that you can do, right? Being able just to research online, summary reports. Maybe you're designing a solution for customers to buy a tax-free savings account. You can go online, research, get some statistics about who's buying that product, right? How much are people are paying for, etc. Right? You can get summary, executive summary stats about data usage, kind of devices that we have, right? Demographics, etc. Right? You can go today to Google, enter a question, and see responses under the people also ask, which are frequently asked questions, right? You can even try to address those kind of questions, right? Look at the keywords that people use to to search and come into your website, because those will actually help you to fine tune your experience. And you also get an understanding of the type of words and how simple the language your customers are using, and so that you can tailor your experience, right? And even when you marketing, you can even look at those organic search, such keywords to supplement and complement the content, so that you know how you can attract your customers and speak the language that they speak when they are searching for a brand, right? And the other thing is for us, we often don't spend a lot of time when you're doing our research, zooming into the details and getting comfortable with Google Analytics, right? And yeah, so I want to talk about that briefly. The need for us, to be comfortable at looking at keywords, looking for patterns and see what we can identify, and kind of see the type of language that our customers are using, right? That is rich information, and even some of the tips that I've shared if you don't have a UX researcher, right? And getting comfortable with Google Analytics, right? Understanding how customers are coming in, and with what intent, the devices that they use, even the time that they use, your website or app, etc. Right? And I mean, analytics is getting richer, right? You can get a lot of rich data for your app, for your website, for social media, etc. And now even the interpretation of a digital experience is not just focusing on apps or websites, right? But people are doing more and more on social media, right? You'll be able to sell without necessarily having to ask customers to leave social media to go to your website, right? Anyways, so let me just pause here, right? And we've got 4 minutes, and yeah, I'm quite keen because I wanted to cover a few things, but I think we're there. But I'm quite keen just to hear from you guys, what you think, what you can add, etc. So let me start off with Mpumi.
Yeah, I mean, nothing much to add. I think you've covered it. I think, I mean, your last point around spending more time doing research than designing is really important, because I've been thinking about this quite a lot lately. That if you're a designer, theoretically you are kind of a researcher before you are a designer, because you kind of need to know your audience, right? You need to know. So spending some time really finding different ways to empathize, that step in the process is really really key, because I think that that's the thing that lays the foundation for everything else that falls that you're going to be doing down the design journey. And that's really it. I mean, I think if there's anything that designers take away from our chat, is probably to invest themselves in understanding, in different ways of understanding or empathizing, as it were, because I think that's really the most foundational thing. Because you could even design ugly things that probably work well if you understand who you're designing it for, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks, Mputhumi.
Sure. Maduna?
Just one thing, I think, as we mentioned, yeah, you covered a lot, and everything that is pertinent. The one thing that I want to just share with anyone up and coming: do not neglect the fact that you're creative. One of the things that I've learned is that creatives tend to see the world differently to how conventional people see the world. So in your journey of becoming whichever type of designer you are, don't ignore the fact that your perception and your ways of doing things is and can live in the space. Yes, we spoke a lot about stealing, we spoke a lot about, researching. Don't let that take away from you synthesizing completely new parts. You look at Apple before 2005, or I think 2004, no one thought Sony was going to be debased in that space. And Apple said, we believe, we've done our research, we know what we're talking about. So if you have that firm start on something, and you have done your groundwork, obviously it has to be based on something. And hence why I think Pumi was saying that you basically are a researcher about being a designer, because you can't not design for something. What are you solving for if you're designing something? And if it's aesthetics, that is a solve for something that's lacking. So the key thing, don't use your uniqueness in the F to fit in, because if you truly are a researcher in terms of you did your research and you're creative, your solution will land. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks a lot, guys. Yeah. I also need to reflect on the words that you guys have shared, right? And we've come to an end. And I just want to say thank you so much, for joining. And we will have another session next week exactly at this time, 3 to 4 p.m. And today we actually tried out this streaming platform called Restream. And hope you I hope to see you again at Maduna. And thanks a lot, guys, and thanks Bumi. Thanks to Nis, and I know some guys are struggled, but let's see. Hopefully next week, things will run a bit smooth. But guys, thanks a lot. Let's keep connecting, inspiring, and building an African design community. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, man.
Sure.